I'm Reba Tony. This is Joy in Our Town. Now this morning, we're pulling back the curtain, the orange curtain. Did you know that Orange County, California is second only to Florida in deaths by pharmaceutical overdoses by young people? And here's the ugly truth. We are a drug culture. America has 4.6% of the world's population, and we consume 80% of the pharmaceutical opiate drugs in the world. And the drug lord, Big Pharma, or the pharmaceutical industry, with its powerful lobbying claws sunk deep into Washington and Sacramento. It's about money, big money. And to find the pushers, you don't have to go to Skid Row. Addiction is big business in affluent Orange County, and the opiate pharmaceutical drugs are plentiful. If you're a parent, it's not just the dirty doctors that you have to watch out for. It's the medical industry, where drugs are simply overprescribed. Pill popping is a medical standard. And parents, if you think you know about your kids and drugs and you think you can keep your family safe, you don't know. Not really. Not until you get the call telling you that your child is dead, because that's how it happens. A good kid, one dumb choice, and you bury a child. Today, one woman is heading up a movement with the award-winning film Behind the Orange Curtain. She's brought a panel with her today to the studio to help us peer behind that orange curtain. And later in the show, we'll continue the discussion with Senator Mimi Walters, a DEA representative and a parent turned activist. Please meet executive film producer of Behind the Orange Curtain, Natalie Costa. Natalie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me why this film needed to be made. What happened in your life that told you, I've got to do this?
In May of 2010, a childhood friend of my daughter's passed away from an overdose of Opana. And I live in Orange County. I'm a business owner. I thought I'm a mom in the know, and I had no idea what Opana was. And it turns out to be one of the most intense opiates that they usually give to end-stage cancer patients. And I'm like, why are children, young men, women, messing around with something that intense? So started to dig and started to ask around and found out that we have a massive epidemic here in Orange County.
Okay, so you said you're a small business owner. Are you a small business owner of a detective agency? What's your business?
No, I own a performing arts academy, and my teachers happen to be film directors from LA. So when I was asking questions, I found out a lot of parents that had gone through the same thing, that they've lost their children are addicted. We decided to put together a documentary. Thought it was going to be just a little short documentary, and it turned into a full feature because the stories are endless.
They're endless. And let's go back to this Opana. You said they give this, I've never even heard of this drug. They give this to cancer patients?
Yes.
And they give it to them to take home. They don't just give it to them at the hospital.
Probably. I mean, there are people on long-term prescriptions for Opana that have intense pain. These opiate products, the OxyContin, they have a significant purpose in real medicine.
Okay.
But the problem that we have, and what the film is about, is a wake-up call and a call to action. So to wake up parents to say that there are dirty doctors out there that are prescribing like crazy, and these young kids are going into these doctors, getting prescriptions for opiates, and then partying with them. And they are so addictive that the step is the addiction kicks in rather quickly, and then they move to heroin because it produces the same high for a fraction of the cost.
Okay, okay. So this is a drug that's here in Orange County.
Every county.
This is something that happened to you, and now, of course, we have the film. Now, you brought some guests with you today that are going to talk more about this, the recreational side of this drug that you said does have a real medical purpose.
Well, it's Opana, it's OxyContin, it's Xanax, it's Somas, it's Klonopin, it's Adderall, it's Ritalin, it's all of those drugs. But the opiates are the problem right now because the addiction is so strong, so intense that the heroin is the next answer because they can't afford the cost of prescription drugs.
Wow. Now, Matt, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Now, you're a recovering addict, and you've helped so many people over the years. But take us back to when you were in your addiction. Did it kick in instantly? Was it one of these experiences where the first time you used one of these drugs, you were hooked?
I knew from the moment that I started messing around at 12 years old that I was in for a rough road. I knew right away. Addiction runs on both sides of my family. On my mom's side, I have two uncles that are recovering crystal meth users.
Wow.
My mom had her struggles. My grandfather died of alcoholism.
Wow.
So I knew at a young age kind of what was going to happen with me. and the consequences got heavy immediately. You know, when I started using it, it progressively started with marijuana and alcohol, and then pretty much opened the door for everything. I wasn't just focused on one drug. I was doing everything from opiates to speed. I mean, within 4 years of me starting to use, I was, you know, I was being sent away by my family. They had no clue on what to do with me. I was their firstborn son, and you know, that wasn't working, and juvenile hall, county jail to state prison until I was probably about 27. You know, really like God was tugging on my heart that either I was going to continue down this road or I was going to change my life. And, you know, so it was pretty much 20 years of bad decisions. And it was all fueled around drugs.
Now,
period.
your story is a story that we've heard before. The gateway drug, marijuana, alcohol, a history in your family of addiction. Now, was that similar? The history obviously was with your brother, but did he do the same gateway route you did, or did he start off a lot heavier?
My brother always had an outlet. He was a professional surfer from down the San Clemente area, and he didn't really get involved with the heavy stuff or was going down the road I was. He was always, you know, smoking marijuana and just kind of what the majority of kids in junior high and high school were doing at the time. You know, the people that I was associated with and the path that I took, it didn't get that heavy for Travis. But I could tell you within 3 years of him starting opiates, he was dead.
So he had he was on kind of the softer drugs, they would say, for years. But once he got on the opiates,
it was done. It was over. I think he saw what happened with me and how bad it got for me at a young age. That he knew when to stop. You know, my parents wouldn't notice.
He passed away because of this addiction.
Yes.
And
yes,
where were you when you learned of that?
I was working at a Teen Challenge, the Ministry of Teen Challenge up in Santa Ana, and you know, I was called into the chapel at 8 in the morning, and they said my brother was dead, and you know, my mom and dad were, you know, of course devastated, but I don't really think they got a call. It was just the coroner showed up with a cardboard box of his belongings. That's all he had, and they found him dead in a hotel.
And Natalie, this isn't uncommon.
No.
You're saying you did the digging. You're the Aaron Brockovich of Orange County. You know, getting out there and finding these stories and piecing them together.
It's more common than you think. You know, a lot of parents are very sympathetic towards other parents who've lost their child, but the reality of it is it could be their child. It's on every school ground. It starts, the age of experimentation is between 10 and 15 years of age. It starts in the home medicine cabinet. It's also, you know, you got to watch what you're doing at home with your own behaviors. You have to lock up your medicine. But you know, you talk to parents, you have a conversation about this. Everyone, I challenge them to do it. And someone that you talk to is going to know someone, have this experience in their life. It is epidemic. And the DEA said it's epidemic.
And they're not starting with the gateway drugs so much anymore. Like you said, they're starting in the medicine cabinet now.
They can, yes.
And that's a big difference that we're seeing now. And Matt, you still work with people at Teen Challenge, so you've probably seen the stories change over the years.
Well, I work now for Able to Change Recovery,
Okay.
which is a 12-step program. And in the last 4 years that I've been there, off and on, I've just seen the amount of young people coming in for opiates and for prescription painkillers. It's just like 80-90% of the people that are coming in there, and these are young kids, 19, 20, and I listen to them on the patio during lunch break, talking and bragging about how many times they OD'd and thinking that, you know, that is funny. So it's really serious, and it has to be, you know, the awareness has to be raised, because it's only, in my experience working in recovery, it's getting worse. The deaths are becoming more frequent. I never went to a funeral in high school for any of my friends. You know, the drug scene wasn't like it is now, you know, but everybody, all these young kids, everybody
Now
that's
it's
coming in, it's all.
And I want to move to Asia. Asia, thank you for being here. Now, your story, as we see in the film, you almost died
Yeah.
from a party.
Yes.
Going to a party, like Matt was just saying, when, you know, growing up, we didn't see people dying from going to parties.
Well,
What
I
happened
went
to you
to
that
a
night?
rave. So it wasn't like a normal high school party. It was a rave, and there's DJs, and ecstasy was everywhere. So I took ecstasy because I was 18. I was fearless. I just wanted to have fun. I thought I was invincible, that I'm from Orange County, my parents will bail me out if I'm in trouble, and I actually overdosed on the dance floor.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had a seizure on the dance floor.
Now, had you ever taken this drug before?
I had it before a few times, but I wasn't a recreational user. I never craved the drug or had to have that drug. I was just young. I wanted to party. And this time I went too far.
So did they tell you what was in the drug that made you overdose on it? Because from what I hear, ecstasy or Molly, some of the new
Hemingways.
drugs, they're combinations of many drugs. Did you ever find that out?
I have no idea, but I was in the hospital, and while I was in my coma, they told my mom that my pill was cut with cat tranquilizer, heroin, Special K. So I had multiple things in my system from that one pill.
And that is such a far cry from the word ecstasy.
Right.
Oh, this is going to be, I mean, ecstasy, that just sounds fun and exuberant. And if you had known that day that you were taking cat tranquilizers, heroin, and Special K, that's another tranquilizer, do you think you would have still taken it?
Probably not.
Yeah, that's, I imagine. Now, Natalie, do these young people know what they're taking when they grab these pills?
Sure. There's even parties called Skittle parties where you can't get into the party unless you bring pills, and they put them in a bowl and kids pick at them all night long and have no idea what they're taking. The problem is that it's prevalent, I think, a lot with young males. They're fearless. They don't think anything's going to happen to them. It's a drug. It comes from a doctor. It's safe. So they, open their mouth, they insert pill, and they are on a pathway that a lot of them don't come back from.
And Asia, you almost didn't make it back.
Yeah.
How long were you in a coma?
I was in a coma for 2 months,
Wow.
and I had 4 strokes.
4 strokes. What has the recovery process been for you?
I had to relearn how to walk and talk.
Wow.
It's been 4 years, and I'm still, I have balance issues. My handwriting's slow. As you can tell, my speech isn't perfect. But I know I'm here for a reason, and I know God saved me for a reason. And I believe that reason is to share my story and save lives of kids who are dabbling in drugs.
And you said earlier that when you were in your coma, your mom would ask you a question about saving lives. What did she say to you?
My mom, when I was in my coma, my mom said, Asia, if you survive, if you live, will you save kids' lives? And I squeezed her hand and said yes.
Even from a coma. Wow.
It's amazing.
So there are some stories that are coming out of this that are changing lives, and we're taking a look behind this orange curtain for just that purpose, so that we can make a difference, and that's really what Natalie's film is all about. We're going to take a look at a trailer from the movie right now, and then we'll be back with more.
The OC, baby.
I love living here.
Orange County is a fantastic place. The natural beauty in Orange County is unsurpassed.
There is tremendous wealth here, no doubt about it.
Everybody thinks Orange County is the place to live. It's like the perfect world here, but that's on the outside.
A lot of calls involving teen prescription drug overdoses.
On the inside, it's a different story right now. It's an epidemic.
It's actually becoming an epidemic.
I wouldn't have thought in a million years that I would have had a son that was addicted to drugs.
First time I did prescription drugs, I was 13.
I started drinking when I was like 12 years old in 6th grade.
I was 12 years old when I started getting involved with drugs.
Started going to raves and doing ecstasy around 18, and then I was just spiraled out of control from there.
There's the parents that have done the drugs, that know about the drugs, and there's the parents that are the squares that never gotten high in their life, and they have kids that are on heroin. How are they supposed to know if their kids are on heroin? Unless somebody tells them, or they get a phone call that says, you're gonna have to come down and identify your son.
When I woke from the coma, I couldn't walk or talk.
This is my sister Jessica Silver's ashes.
And I've been to 13 funerals in the last whole 12 months.
6:59 a.m., they found my son, face down, laying in the dirt.
If you could go back, would you use drugs, alcohol, or marijuana, Aaron? One for yes, two for no.
I don't want to tell you the truth, Because when I'm active in my addiction, I don't want help.
Joining us now are Senator Mimi Walters, a DA representative, and DA Representative Mike Lewis from the Los Angeles Division, and parent activist James Kennedy. Thank you all so much for being here. Everyone here has a compelling story that it's all so emotional, but at the same time, it really is changing Orange County and hopefully the way America looks at this. So thank you so much for sharing your stories here today. Now, Senator, I want to talk for a second about the 911 Good Samaritan. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it's a law that was passed in California that basically says if you're underage and you have a friend who's in need, you can call 911 and you're not going to be held responsible and get prosecuted.
Okay, so what would they be prosecuted for? Are they just afraid that they're going to get in trouble? Or?
They might get in trouble. They might have been taking drugs. They might have been drinking themselves.
I see.
They may have been breaking the law.
Okay, so this is the law. We've seen it in movies where the night gets crazy and a car pulls up to the hospital and they kind of drop off their best friend and take off afraid for their lives. You're saying they don't have to be afraid to bring someone, to get help for someone.
Exactly. It's all about saving lives of young people.
Okay, that's huge. I've never heard of that law before, and that really does need to be out there. Kids need to know this.
Absolutely.
Now, James, you have a story that is, it's just the worst case scenario. You got that call about your son. Can you tell us more?
Well, first of all, let me just tell you a little bit about my son, Joey. He was a beautiful young man. He was charismatic. He was creative. He was athletic. People loved him. He had a love for people. And unfortunately, like many young people, he was introduced to opiates when he was about 19 or 20 years old. And right from the very beginning, he became addicted. And then ultimately what happened was, he passed away. The tragedy of him passing away was that he was prescribed opiates and Xanax, a combination which is very lethal, by a doctor here locally in Southern California who's known to be what they refer to as a dirty doctor. He paid the doctor $150 cash for the prescription. You know, these doctors, unfortunately, they're in the minority, but they're there. They profit from prescriptions and from the illness of the individual versus trying to help the person get well. They don't care. They just make the money off the prescription. So this is what happened with Joe, and he overdosed on the prescription. The people he was with, I wouldn't call them friends, I would call them, for the best analogy, they're other addicts, okay? Yeah. And the 911 or the Good Samaritan law wasn't in place at that particular time, and so rather than taking him to a hospital or calling 911 at the time, they put him in a car and they drove past 4 or 5 hospitals. And then they dumped him face down in the gravel on the side of Camino Capistrano Road in San Juan Capistrano at a little bit after midnight on the 4th of February of 2010. They then proceeded to do some other things, and then they called 911 from Mission Viejo. When the dispatcher said, "Are you calling from the Jack in the Box?" the kid hung up.
Wow.
Later on, when the police investigated, because this particular situation with my son actually started out as a homicide investigation. And it was a homicide investigation for 9 months. And then eventually, all this came out that, the reason they dumped him there is because they were afraid that they were going to be prosecuted or get in trouble with the police. The unfortunate circumstance here is that the 911 call was made. Eventually, the dispatcher determined the coordinates where my son was, but he made a decision not to send anybody out. And his reasonings were that he didn't want to send them on a wild goose chase. Yet the next morning, at 6:15 or 6:50 a.m. the next morning, there was 37 police officers there. My son was deceased.
That is the worst case scenario. That's everything gone wrong. Every part of that story gone wrong. And it all going back to that opiate from even a good kid. We know that if a good person tries heroin, they're going to be addicted to heroin. But we don't know that if a good person tries opiates, that it's going to hook them in. that quickly. Natalie, is that
That's
the problem?
absolutely, yeah, it is. It's instantly, you can become instantly dependent on it, and you need more of it. And opiates on the street, OxyContin is about $1 a milligram. So you get up to Oxy 80s, that's $80 a pill. And if you need 8 or 10 of those a day, you're talking over $1,000 a day you need for your habit, when you can buy a balloon of heroin for a couple dollars, and that'll last you a lot longer and give you the same high. So we have a massive amount of prescriptions flooding the streets through dirty doctors. There's laws on the books that are hopefully the cure system, which is going to pinch that supply chain, making doctors and pharmacies accountable for the prescriptions that are written. But once that does happen, and I believe it will, we're going to see a spike in heroin, because they're not going to be able to get the opiates easily through the pharmacies and the doctors. They're going to wind up going to the streets. And I think that Mike can testify too that there are probably 25 or 30 doctors in Orange County that are on the watch list right now.
Mike, is that true? 25 or 30 doctors?
We are working a fair number of investigations in the greater LA area. When physicians do not handle their responsibilities correctly and they cause the diversion of controlled substances, that's when they come in under investigation.
I see.
We try to move the cases as quickly as we can, but all of these investigations take time.
Yeah, how do we get to these doctors before we have a story like James' son? Is there a way to find out before the incident happens that these doctors are making these bad prescriptions?
Well, California has the prescription monitoring program CURES, and that's been very beneficial for law enforcement. It's, again, a state system, not federal. Law enforcement, state, federal, and local, uses multiple sources to identify the doctors. But also we're trying to educate the physicians, the pharmacists, because they all play a key role. And if they do their jobs responsibly, that will also cut off the flow.
That's what I was going to ask Senator Mimi Walters. With the CURES program, we're seeing more legislation come through to help cut off these doctors?
We are, and actually it's very encouraging to see that our legislators are looking at this issue as a very serious problem and wanting to get a handle on it. I mean, I first really understood what an epidemic it was is when Natalie came to my office and we talked about it. And I mean, I read it in the paper. I'm a mom of 4 kids, ages 16 to 20. I didn't even understand how bad this was until I watched the Orange Curtain, and one of my sons said to me, "Mom, I know Asia. She came to my school and talked to us." And so that really opened up my eyes, and so we're doing everything we can to try to help make this problem not as large as it is.
Now, do you see the lobbyists still playing a huge role in this? Is there any legislation to combat from the pharmaceutical companies?
There have been several pieces of legislation that have been introduced, not by myself, but by other legislators. And the whole idea is we need to bring everybody together to the table. We need to bring the doctors to the table. We need to bring the pharmaceutical industry to the table. We need to bring the pharmacists to the table. And we need to bring parents to the table. Because at the end of the day, the kids, the easiest access that the kids are getting these prescription pills is in the medicine cabinet of the parents. And we have to do an outreach and really educate the people in the state of California and the parents so that they understand that access to these pills is too easy.
Is that the same thing you're seeing, Natalie?
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, the age of experimentation goes down to about the age of 10. So you have to start talking to your kids in middle school, because if you're not doing it, somebody else at the school is, or they have brothers and sisters. So, you know, you teach your children to share. They're sharing their Adderall, which is speed. And you can't just stop Adderall. You have to be weaned off of it. And so there's all these things that are in the medicine cabinet that are prescribed that you have to really start asking questions. Is this something, I mean, if you went to the doctor and he said, I'm going to give you heroin for your sore back, would you take it?
No.
Exactly.
Never. Yeah. And well, you used to hear these stories of addiction stemming from someone having, you know, long-term pain, pain treatment, but now they're just popping up out of the blue from young people who aren't having any pain problems. Why are they taking it to begin with? Do you know why your son first tried it? Was it recreational?
Actually,
was it peer pressure?
Actually, he was introduced to it by a girlfriend.
Really?
Her mother was you know, suffering from some, I think it was fibromyalgia, and she had all types of pain medication, and the girl actually offered it to my son, and unfortunately it's just like playing Russian roulette. You know, some people have a propensity for addiction right from the get-go, and unfortunately that happened with my son. I mean, as soon as he took that opiate, he was hooked.
Wow.
And you know, I like to refer to the Cures program a little bit, if I may, you know, because I am active in trying to help people, you know, save lives. And the problem you have with Cures is it's underfunded. You know, it has one person who administrates it. Right. The participation is in single digits as far as physicians and so forth. You know, the medical board, where we just testified a few weeks ago, myself and many other people who lost their children to prescription drug overdoses, really is not policing its own organization. You know, I refer to them as the fox guarding the hen house. You know, they were provided an opportunity to increase their licensing fee by $9 a year per physician. That's the cost of 2 lattes. And they shot it down. That would have funded the Cures program.
Wow.
So, you know, there's a lot of things that have to be changed, not only in education, like Mike had mentioned, but more importantly, you know, our system has to be changed. You know, people have to understand that we live in a day and age where we are a drug culture, and we're in trouble. And our young people are in dire trouble, and we have to do whatever we can as responsible human beings and parents to do to help change the system, because if we don't do that, then we're really, really going to be in trouble.
So changing it from the home, changing it from the legislation,
right,
and changing it from increasing awareness.
Right, and people have to understand that drug addiction is not a moral failing.
Right.
It is something beyond their control. These pills are very powerful. Addiction is very powerful if there's a gene in the family. So, you know, they need to understand and have compassion. There are so many people afflicted with this now. You just have to have an open heart and try to help them the best you can, and give them resources and you know, just keep fighting, because the parents were the ones that got the 911 law on the map. So the parents are getting behind this Cures thing. So you have to get in touch on the website or whatever, and we'll help you get letters out or whatever, because we're going to have a mass rally, I believe, in trying to get Cures going in California to, you know, save some lives.
To save lives. And with the Cures program, Mike, I just wanted to ask again, this is actually finding the doctors and